So, good morning, Christian.
Good morning, David. Good to see you.
Likewise, it's great to have you here and great to see you again. We trained together for the diploma with Animas back in 2022. Had many conversations, so it's absolutely wonderful to have you here and to feature you for the show.
Yeah,
Um,
thanks, and likewise. Happy
for
to be
anyone,
here.
Great to have you. For anyone who doesn't know Christian, he's a professional coach, founder of the Christian Madsen Academy, in which he's transforming adventurous leaders, teams, and professionals to reach their true potential, healthy high performance, and well-being. As well as being a coach, Christian works for MISC as a leadership development facilitator and also ran the very grueling Marathon des Sables 4 times in total, which is I think a 250k run over 7 days through the desert. So there's an awful lot for us to get into today. So I'd love to ask you, Christian, to get started. How did you get into coaching?
Yeah, and thanks, David, for the introduction, the nice introduction. I think coaching is something I got into, especially through my military career. That was the first time. I have a long leadership background in the military services, first in the Army and then as a naval officer. And there we were introduced to coaching very sporadically, you could call it. It's 20 years ago or so. So coaching was at a different place than today. So we were introduced to it, and it was very much focused on performance coaching or behavioral coaching at the time. So an introduction to use that in our leadership, how we could form our teams through coaching. And then it was actually first later that I was really diving deeper into coaching myself, because I had an interest in coaching as a profession, as a craft, you could call it, which was when I started my own company, which relates very much to the race you were talking about in the introduction. In the desert, I created a business or company where I focused on performance coaching of athletes, endurance athletes, triathlon, cycling, running, endurance running, what we call ultra running today. And it was at a time where ultra running in particular was not very introduced in our world, and it became more and more interesting for people to do something more extreme than an Ironman or triathlons and so on. And I found it extremely interesting to look into those mental aspects of doing something that extraordinary, and wanted to build a company out of a passion, because I was also an athlete myself, doing extreme running, different desert races, mountain races, ultra races, and thought that one leg of my company could be to have performance coaching of ordinary people doing extraordinary feats, you could call it, which was fantastic to be able to be to partner with coaches on that and clients. And then another leg that was more into the business of that specialty equipment that you need for doing these sports. Different niche products that I could introduce to the different markets in the Nordics. So actually that was really my time where I focused a lot on performance coaching and was introduced to performance coaching. That was based on taking a course in as an NLP practitioner and coach. So utilized many of those NLP techniques in my coaching through those first years in particular, and set up different mental training courses also that had elements of those techniques, but also coaching aspects to it. And I think I think I was really intrigued about what coaching can do in that partnership of helping people achieve some extraordinary goals or outcomes.
Thanks, Christian, for that whistle stop tour. I wondered, you mentioned there about performance and behavioral coaching versus what we know as transformative coaching. I wondered if you could give a little definition there of what's the difference and if there's any crossover between the two.
I think, performance coaching is it's very much where you have a set goal, you have a time bound goal. You have it's realistic, it's achievable, it's time bound, and kind of like SMART goals, very easy to see from start to finish in that sense, and helping people achieve that. So very much with an end goal in mind that is very specific, and that's actually that relates very well to myself and how I was in those days, very much focused on achieving different sports goals, myself, athletic goals, which are typically more with an end goal in mind, a specific time in a race or particular performance that you want to achieve, winning, all of those elements. Whereas you can say developmental coaching is another aspect where you focus a lot more on building a competency, for example, if it's in the corporate world. And that's typically more narrow in that sense, that you have a skill set that you want to build. And transformative coaching is much deeper in that sense for me, meaning that you create some more awareness of inner beliefs, values, assumptions, and try to work on those to create a long-lasting change. Which is actually also one of the reasons for me choosing Animas and the accredited diploma in transformative coaching, because I was looking more towards something that could give more long-lasting changes rather than performance on a certain goal that you want to achieve. And sometimes people don't know when they're coming to coaching what is it that they actually want to achieve, or what is their outcome, what do they want to focus on, what's on their mind. And I think I wanted actually something different to be able to utilize with especially today where I'm working with leaders in transition a lot. How can you handle these transitions? What are the underlying beliefs and assumptions and values that are either supporting you or hindering your leadership in that sense? And very much in the corporate world, coaching that has been around for years has been very much focused on performance, and it still is. And of course, we are also to achieve things, but I wanted something that I could utilize differently in the organizations that I'm working with.
Thanks, Christian, for sharing. I'm aware that your journey with Animas didn't start and finish with the diploma. I know that you went on after the transformative coaching diploma to study a group coaching certification. You've delivered a CPD, a continuous professional development course through our platform Coaches Uncaged for our alumni community. And I understand you're going to be a guest speaker on our summit in November. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about that and your experience of the courses with Animas that you've done so far.
Yeah, and if we start with the group coaching that you mentioned, I actually wanted to expand, you can say, the toolbox, but also the insights on group coaching, because I'm working a lot with leadership development, and in the leadership development, we facilitate different programs, and there we are actually utilizing group coaching a lot in the sessions with different parts or learning groups, you could call it. And I wanted something specifically for groups, that are not teams necessarily, where you have peer learning, and I think that experience with Animas was it was a shorter course where you got to get together with different participants from all over the world, giving different perspectives on and insights on how to do that, how to use action learning, for example, or balance groups in the facilitation and in the group coaching context, and great facilitators on the course as well. So I had a very good experience with the accredited diploma in transformative coaching, where it's a high level, high standard, and high quality course over a long time, where you really get to learn from a lot of different people from all over the world, but also the amazing coaches in the courses. And I think what stood out, what has been standing out for me with for example, the accredited diploma in transformative coaching, is that it's a level 2 ICF accredited, and also gives an award for if you complete it for becoming a senior practitioner with the MCC, which is quite a high standard and quality stamp on the quality of the program. That's something I also look towards, and some has come later in the coaching with the MCC upgrade to senior practitioner, which for me is a quality stamp on it. I think we came through different modules, different opportunities to coach in triads, both in the group coaching CPD, but also in the accredited diploma in transformative coaching, and that really helped in creating a good, safe environment for our learning as coaches, new coaches, or more experienced coaches, if it's the next step. It was for me, because I was already certified in an MFP as a coach earlier. So I think it gave me a variety of different perspectives, because there was so many different people attending the course with the different contexts, different lives, and an inspiration also to how can I coach, what is my style as a coach, which has been fantastic. So I've really enjoyed that journey, and also have recommended it to people I know. And I'm not involved in Animas in any way, besides, of course, also giving different facilitations as well. And so it's coming from a place of that I think it's a really good place and a really good courses provided.
Christian, I would be inclined to agree. Speaking of journeys you've been on that you may or may not recommend, can you tell us about the Marathon des Sables? I get the impression that it's a massive physical undertaking, a seriously huge challenge, and I know, I'm aware that you undertook that challenge 4 times in total, and one of those times you weren't able to complete it. And I wonder if you could tell us more about the marathon, and perhaps that what happened that time, and what you learned from doing this outrageous, physically challenging event.
Yeah, and it's to me it has really been an adventure, wanting to experience the desert, but also trying to see what can I achieve as a runner, as an athlete, and achieving these goals. The race is, as you mentioned, 250 kilometers in the southern part of the Moroccan Sahara Desert. So we have degrees up to 50 degrees in some parts of it, and it's actually getting worse over these years due to climate changes, like we see when we're going on holidays in southern Europe, for example. So you are carrying your own backpack with 7-8 kilos used some compulsory equipment you need for running in the desert and staying there. Running between different places, different camps. Over these 7 days, you have different stages where you have up to you have a marathon stage, you have different 30-kilometer stages, you have a long stage which is up to, I've seen it up to a 90 kilometers, where you run through the evening or night. And you have participants from all over the world, kind of like our Animas course, different age groups, different backgrounds, also ordinary people wanting an adventure that has, of course, had a focused training towards doing this undertaking that it is. Because as you say, it's a massive undertaking. It's an extreme place, but it's also a very safe race, because they have helicopters, they have different vehicles driving in the desert to support. They have crew that is supporting with safety, doctors, medical assistants, all of that. You need to have an ECG before going there. So you have this kind of health check before going into the race, which is fantastic. So for me, the first time in 2011 was just doing it, trying it out. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how it would be. Extremely challenging, especially the heat. I'm coming from Denmark, so I'm used to rather cold weather, changing weather. So I trained with extra clothes on, doing saunas, training in saunas, but it's still different than when you then go to the desert and experience the heat. So I did it, and it was challenging. Mentally, I didn't know what to prepare for, so it was, I think, 9 months of training, long distances, mentally preparing for being out on your feet with a backpack in many hours. And just to compare the next races I participated in 2013, in the first stage, I cramped up in my thighs, my calf muscles, my legs all together, and got really scared from that experience, because I hadn't tried to cramp up that significantly in a race, which made me afraid of what can I do this? Can I actually handle it? And I actually withdraw and abandon the race. But I actually got the opportunity to stay with the camp. So we are in these different, you can call it tents, or bivouacs, where we are all together from Denmark, for example, as a Danish or Scandinavian group. So I stayed with them and was actually able to see it from the outside, what they were going through, which actually relates very much to coaching. So try to help them come to terms with what they were, where they were mentally at during the race, but also telling them a little bit about that, how I've experienced it throughout the years, kind of like a more mentoring hat on also. And then seeing people both abandon the race, but also, like I did, but also see people complete it, and getting that feeling that, okay, now I need to come back and do it better. And then I came back in 14 and 15. I think I became number 70 out of 1,500 runners in 15. So really prepared, optimized everything I could, weight on the backpack, getting a little insane about equipment, my own weight, my training, got a coach myself to mentally prepare, but also physically, but mentally, especially on what to do when things happen that you haven't planned for. So getting that adaptive mindset and flexible mindset where you can actually adapt throughout, and that requires required, at least for me, having a coach of myself, where the coach helped me on different perspectives, opening up for different perspectives on how I could approach that different situation, and only planning for very small bits and pieces of the race mentally. So it taught me really to both enjoy the small things in life. A cup of coffee was luxury out in the desert, but thinking about that, actually tasting that flavor of coffee and enjoying it and be happy about that and grateful for that experience, because in a context where you don't have it, then it's really a luxury. And the same with water. So in that desert race, it's the first time I really felt the need for water, and being grateful for getting water. So the small things matter in preparation, but also in life. So, and then I think mentally and also relating to coaching, I think I used many of the learnings in the coaching I had with ordinary people later on that wanted to do ultra marathons, but also the desert race here, in opening up, learning about themselves, and creating that self-awareness, and help them when they were creating their plans for the races they were doing.
Wow. It's a great shout out there, Christian, to the things we take for granted that we don't realize until they're taken away. Like the taste of a coffee in the desert, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
Or in your case, some water as a well in almost 50-degree heat. I can't begin to imagine it. In terms of what you learned from the Marathon des Sables and the coaching with Animas, I know that since taking the course, you've transitioned into a new role in a new company. I wondered if you could tell us more about that, and how you're using and applying that coaching skill set within the business which you're working for.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, I'm working for Maersk. It's 100,000 more than 100,000 employees globally, and more than 10,000 leaders. So we are having I'm a leadership development facilitator and coach, and working with leaders across the organization in different programs, leadership development programs. And many of the programs, we have a coaching approach in our facilitation. So I'm actually using the coaching, so implying that asking more questions than just providing answers and training, you can call it. So more facilitation and coaching in the approach. And we also have group coaching setups where we are actually having learning groups, where peer learning groups, where I apply group coaching to some degree in those, and helping transitioning leaders, for example, on some of the programs, gain self-awareness on their own leadership, and how they can build on each other's learning as a leader, and get inspired as well, which is fantastic to be part of. And then, of course, one-to-one coaching, still have that with leaders, and that focus a lot on leadership coaching, but it could also be, for example, transitioning leaders moving into a new leadership role, which is typically comparable. It's a transition and comparable to getting a divorce in terms of the impact it can have on your life, because it's so challenging. So so helping leaders broaden their self-awareness, finding out what are some of the blind spots in their own behaviors, their own skill sets, approaches, and thereby helping them become more effective leaders, which is quite inspiring because I also have a long leadership background myself. So it's not applying my own learning, but it's opening up for their experiences, their perspectives, their self-awareness, their assumptions, challenging those to help them become better leaders.
Yes. I have to ask, you mentioned that it can be almost as challenging or equivalent to, to going through a divorce. So can you elaborate?
Yeah, I think when you're talking about transitions in life, it's huge changes that affects from the outside, and then that psychological process we go through as people to come to terms with the changes is takes time, takes an effort, and people are different. It takes a different time for different people. And there's this kind of a change curve that you undergo as a person when something like that happens. It could be moving to a different city, it could be a divorce, but it could also be a leadership transition that we're talking about here. So, for example, if you've been used to being a specialist, being the subject matter expert of a certain topic in an organization, and you're suddenly moving into your first leadership role where you are not the expert necessarily anymore. You need to utilize all the great insight and skill sets from your team. You need to delegate responsibility, but also empower your people so they can grow. You need to have that coaching approach where you help them become better. You provide feedback. You coach them to improve. That is a lot different than you knowing what the topic is about and only delivering your own KPIs, if we're talking about that, for example. And that can be mentally challenging. It can be a huge transition for many people, and it takes time. And there will also be lots of mistakes in that and things you do wrong, and then you learn on the fly. But coaching can then help make that transition even better, but also perhaps faster. So you get to that space of better leadership shorter in a shorter time.
It's Christian. It's interesting how I spoke to Tom Pilgrim last week in an interview, and we discussed how in the tech and data sector, it's quite typical for well, it's not atypical for someone in team, a subject matter expert, to be right at the top of their game in terms of their knowledge and their field of expertise, and then to step into a leadership role and kind of everything can fall apart as it's a complete change of gear. And like you say, it can be life shattering in some circumstances. I wondered if there's any sort of any tips, any advice or guidance that you would share to someone that's in that position, because it sounds like that's maybe not limited to the tech sector, and sounds like that's multi-sector, sector agnostic. What would you recommend for someone stepping into their first leadership role?
I think some of the challenges firstly is how do you actually manage both yourself but also your time. I think you will be so swamped up in meetings when you become a leader, typically in many organizations. So getting an understanding of and clear priorities on your time and managing that effectively is a good place to start. So what do you need to spend your time on? What's important for your role right now? That's one thing. Managing yourself is also gaining that insights into yourself and you're gaining that self-awareness. And I think it's also related a little bit to ego. When you've been a specialist, where you an individual contributor, where you know the topics, you know that you're top of the game, you know what you need to do to deliver and shine. you also want to shine in your leadership role. You want to be a good leader. You want to look good in the eyes of your manager and also your team. And you can't start out that way that you simply are the best leader in the world. You need to relax a little bit and then actually stand back a bit and ask some questions from the team. Don't be afraid to ask for help from peers, from others on how they see things, and then gradually build that leadership presence that will come over time. When I was a first-time leader myself, I thought formal leadership would be the place to go. And later, with more experience, found out that my leadership style was a lot different and much more informal. So staying true to who you are as a person and bring in your personality in your leadership role is also something I would recommend for new leaders. And then don't think you need to have all the answers because you don't. It's actually okay to not know everything and know enough and get the insights from the team. You're there to make the team work the best possible as a team to create and deliver results. So you're actually delivering the results through the team. And that mindset change of being focused on that is something to be aware of in the beginning, I think.
So you're moving from being in the spotlight with all the eyes on you to sort of taking a step back and all the eyes being on your team, and you're maybe back there and not getting some of that credit that you used to getting.
Yeah, and perhaps also thinking that you need to do all the work as a leader. Many new leaders, actually also more experienced leaders, they think they need to solve some of the tasks for the team because it's faster, or they are good at it, or the team is perhaps not having the skill set in the same way that you think you have because you know the subject matter, if that's the case. Then sometimes letting go and ensuring that you coach and develop your team members so they can actually do the work if they're not already very capable. There might be a mixture of experience levels in the team, of course, and thinking that you need to do all the work or do the work because you do it better. That mindset change towards that it's actually the team that should be empowered to deliver the results, and you also need to give them the space to be able to shine. And that's part of that change you're undergoing when you're stepping into leadership.
Thanks, Christian. I'm just wondering, for my own curiosity, if you have a coach or a mentor as a new leader, if they have their own very clear, very defined leadership style, and they're advising you as a mentor how to lead, but you also mentioned the importance of staying true to yourself. So I guess my question really is, how as a new leader do you stay true to yourself whilst taking the advice and guidance of mentors and peers who are perhaps more experienced around you?
I think a good example here could be when I was moving into a first leadership role. It was in the Army as a sergeant at the time. There was a clear outlined approach to leading, which was very formal, very disciplined, not necessarily getting to know the people that much. And I thought at the time, I didn't feel comfortable with that. I could do it, but it didn't feel comfortable to me. So I think it's about finding out, getting that self-awareness of what is important for you, values-wise. What are your values as a leader? What is your leadership brand you want to put forward? What's your personality? If you're a person that makes jokes, if you're a person that uses a lot of humor, you don't have to pack it all away because you need to be some kind of a corporate, very formal leader, because you think that's how leaders should be. Leadership is not one thing; it's very diverse in terms of approaches. Of course, there are some guiding principles and some best practices that you can lean to, but there's a lot of diversity in how you can be a leader. And I think what came to me when I had that leadership role in the Army was that one day I thought, okay, this is not who I am. I'm a person that is very relationship driven. That's a personal value of myself for myself. So I wanted to get to know the soldiers I was leading, also on a more personal level, not necessarily very deep, but more than you would typically do, to understand their perspectives and who they were as human beings, and how they could contribute in the team they were part of. So that approach changed things. We began actually to having small encounters where we had used a lot of humor. We laughed a lot, creating that atmosphere where people were a little more loose in that very tense environment where there can also be huge risks in the Army, for example, or in military services. And that relief of tension, that you could actually show a little bit more about yourself and who you were as a person in the team, created a whole difference. Much better atmosphere, much better results, better performance for the team. And my manager once came and said, "Ben, I notice you do things a lot different than other people. I just want to say it's working. Continue doing what you're doing." So that was actually quite an acknowledgement. So sometimes we think leadership should be in a certain way, but you can also reinvent it. You can be yourself, and it's much easier when you also show who you are as a human being, in creating that psychological safety in a team. That is a foundation for creating results.
Thanks, Christian. It's making me think, reinventing leadership and finding your leadership brand. That might end up being the title of our interview. It sounds a little bit, it sounds a little bit like the Animas diploma, in that, we were given all these skills and techniques which are at our availability, at our disposal to use. But then we were also encouraged to meet the client where they're at and to use them if they feel appropriate, suitable, and to ask for permission before using them, so that we're not forcing them on anyone. And it's a cooperation. And the key thing there is that we're remaining true to ourselves, and that we find our own style within the coaching. Does that comparison make sense in terms of what you were saying about the leadership piece?
Yeah, I think so. It relates well to making sure we also, if we are in a team and we are leaders, meet people where they're at. Also, if we're undergoing changes, which teams and organizations are doing a lot, then meeting people where they are, because people are in a different stage of change and readiness for that as well. So that coaching aspect is key, and there is a lot of, as you say, compassion in it. Compassion is both showing the empathy, but also wanting to help getting beyond that and move forward with the person we are having, the client, for example, or if it's a team member, both being with them and understanding where they're at and helping them move on. And that's what we are typically doing in coaching as well.
Thanks, Christian. So in terms of understanding where we're at and helping us move on, starting to bring our wonderful conversation to a close, I wondered if you could just touch on the Christian Madsen Academy and how people can get in touch and find out about more about the work that you're doing and get involved.
Yep, I have my coaching practice called my company CM Academy, or Christian Madsen Academy, which is kind of you could call it a nice menu of different elements, both coaching and team building, and especially focusing on transition coaching, but also performance coaching, as well as the team building aspects that I mentioned. So people are welcome to reach out also, if just for informal conversation over coffee or something like that, and would be happy to share insights and inspire where I can.
Thanks, Christian. So we've got your website, and I know that you're on LinkedIn as well. So I would invite people to get in touch, as we've had some fabulous conversations over the years, a little bit like today.
Yeah.
But just drawing to a close, I think my final question would be, if there's someone on the fence about applying for the course with Animas, they're thinking they're just on the cusp of making that decision to train with Animas as a coach. Is there any advice or words that you would share with them to help them, make a more informed decision about that?
Yeah, I think get in touch if they can with someone that has already done the course. I was actually inspired by a former manager I had that went through the training years ago. It has changed over the years, of course, and been improving overall over the years, of course, more and more, and fine tuned and so on. And but that recommendation from him was actually what kind of opened my eyes for Animas, and getting an understanding about what does it take to go through the different modules. What is the focus of the coaching that we are learning in the course. And then they also, you can say, reaching out to Animas, there are also some great people, great coaches and also facilitators that have experience as coaches, but also can make that distinguishing between what does this course provide compared to different other courses. As mentioned, it was important for me that it was transformative coaching, much more transformational, long term, compared to what I've seen other places.
Thank you so much, Christian, and thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Great.